Hey, it is Andy with the FensePost Indie Music and Vinyl blog. Now, when I compile my best albums of the year each December, I have a few rules for myself. One such rule is that the album must be in my collection. It is inevitable, therefore, that each January I tend to finally get an album that I hadn't picked up that, well, should have made the list. Case in point, the third Alvvays album, Blue Rev, which arrived today, January 15, 2023. Before I dive into the album, a quick admission. I have been calling it Alvvays for a year, emphasis on the V. So you don't make the same mistake as me, I am going to quote the first two sentences from a 2014 Vice article. And I quote, "The first thing you need to know about Toronto's Alvvays is that it is pronounced always. They don't really mind if you pronounce it phonetically, but you'll sound like a dummy." End quote. So the two V's, it's really just a clever, humorous way of writing W, or in the case of this, double V. The album was released in October of 2022, and this is the band's third LP, like I mentioned. It follows Antisocialites from 2017 and their self-titled debut LP from 2013. All three were released on Polyvinyl Records. I have been a fan of Alvvays for years, and last year I finally added their debut LP to my collection. Antisocialites has not yet found its way in, but you can rest assured that it is on my want list. On their Bandcamp page, the band notes that they never intended Blue Rev to take 5 years to release. Unforeseen circumstances threw a wrench into the mix. Singer Molly Rankin's apartment was broken into and a recorder full of demos for the album was taken. One day later, a basement flooded and nearly ruined the band's gear. They lost the rhythm section. Their drummer and bassist were ultimately replaced by Sheridan Riley and Abby Blackwell, respectively. And the pandemic, of course, kept them from rehearsing with the new crew. But when it comes down to it, I would say that the wait was worth it. I'm going to pull a quote from some of the promotional collateral that accompanies Blue Rev. Named for the sugary alcoholic beverage Rankin and McClellan used to drink as teens on rural Cape Breton, Blue Rev looks both back at the country past and forward at an uncertain world, reckoning with what we lose whenever we make a choice about what we want to become. In a sense, if you're in your 30s, or like me, early 40s, you'll find Blue Rev to be incredibly relevant and relatable. Blue Rev seemed to yield quite the acclaim upon its release last year, and that hype is continuing. After all, October wasn't all that long ago. Diving in, you can hear why. It's filled with uncertainty, humor, with reminiscence, with contemplation. It's smart and, like previous Alvvays albums, to be honest, quite catchy. Where their debut LP looked forward, as those in the throes of their early 20s, youthfulness often do, and their sophomore release dealt more with the now, the present, Blue Rev tends to look back into the now and into the future for a much more well-rounded experience. And at the most base level of it all, they do so with the same level of brazen lyrics and catchy melodies and memorable hooks that they've been giving us now for essentially a decade. Let's take a quick look at the vinyl. Right here, I have the blue vinyl version. I love the cover. The image on the front shows a shocked young girl who I assume could very well be Rankin herself, and what I would also assume is her parents. The back simply has the track list. You have a call out to Polyvinyl Records, which has been the band's longtime label. On the inside, you do have a printed inner sleeve with credits on one side and lyrics on the back. The blue vinyl version appears to be the standard. I believe I saw somewhere it may be limited to 4,000, but that may also be one of the other versions. This kind of has a marbling to it, which looks really nice, but it's kind of muted. It's not very present all the way around. It's almost like half marble, half regular blue. I like it. I'm excited to give it a listen on vinyl. A few interesting things to note about Blue Rev on vinyl. First, overall, the album is a little bit dreamier, a little bit fuzzier than, say, Antisocialites or Alvvays, the debut. Next, the vinyl version, at least my pressing on Blue Marble, it almost sounds a little bit different than the digital version. It's almost like it was mastered differently for vinyl. And at that, it gives it almost like a shoegazy sound. It's a welcome change, albeit notably different from, say, some of their earlier work. That doesn't discount that it's still catchy, it's still reminiscent of some of those earlier albums, but just something to be aware of. So, Blue Rev should have been in my top 20 countdown for 2022. I would love to know what you think of Blue Rev, Antisocialites, and Alvvays. Have you made the same mistake as me? Have you always been calling it Alvvays with a V? Let me know in the comments. Don't be shy, and I'll see you next time.